Hey everyone, Hans here. I hope you're doing well. Today, as you might be able to tell, the wind combed my hair a little bit. Again, I know for some of you that's a source of mild bemusement, and well, you know, to for your pleasure, here we are again. But what I wanted to talk a bit is about a character from the 20th century. He's no longer with us. His name is Wilhelm Reich. He is non-white, that is for certain, but he does not strike me as an anti-white. And as I stand by my people, I can still appreciate the works of non-whites if they did something worthy. Why wouldn't I? Right? It would be folly. Now, because he is of a particular desert tribe that a lot of people like to hate on, uh, all I can say to that is there are definitely anti-white factions among them that should be held accountable for all their crimes. But there are also factions there, or maybe I should also say individuals. It's not always faction oriented, although that's a big part of it. But there are also factions and individuals from that desert tribe who, at the very least, are indifferent, which is my personal stance towards them. And then there are some who are very positive towards whites, although that is something I have yet to witness myself. But this Wilhelm Reich is definitely a character that deserves his praise for the work he has done. And he was duly, his life ended in a stockade for the work that he did, which is altogether horrifying and shows you what the powers that be are definitely capable of. So that these powers that be can, or how shall I put it, that power remains in the same hands of the same groups and all of that stuff. Having cleared that all out, if you really dislike that desert tribe, then, and you don't want to hear anything of them, by all means, then you have to close off this video. If you think that Hans is wrong for bringing up a guy among them, well, all I can say is his work will be a boon to anyone that heeds them. Whether you're non-white or a whitey, it stays in the middle actually. And one of the concepts of Wilhelm Reich that he came up with is armoring. And I'm not going to pretend that I know it to its fullest extent. I have to go through some of his works, but I got a surface glance at it. And that surface glance leads me to the initial topic that I actually want to go on about. Is that armoring is a phenomenon that you see in people who have basically an ego problem. Whatever the reason for that, narcissism, for example, or just low self-esteem, all of that stuff. Usually it is, well, even with narcissism, it has a lot to do with low self-esteem, and sometimes even outright hatred for the self. The autophobe, I think you call that. So the individual that hates him or herself. Right. That's, by the way, a very important word to keep in mind. Autophobe. Write it down if you have to. Look it up what it means if you don't think that Hans got it right. But you'll see a lot of them in modernist society, and that will help you. It really will. So, the autophobe, the little man as he calls it, or the armored person, is someone who has all these self-esteem issues and tries to, rather than overcome those problems, rather copes with them. So not facing him or herself, his own problems, his traumas, whatever the reason might be, and much rather just pretends that everything is fine if only he or she does, well, what are the examples? Weightlifting could be it. Getting fat could even be it. Armoring can also manifest in, uh, creating a sort of fake persona, so that the real self is obscured and cannot be called out. It's like, oh, they called out my persona, so they didn't call out me, that sort of thing. There's some psychology involved with this. And those are physical manifestations and, I suppose, personality manifestations of that. I wanted to address something else. It is that by no means do I mean everyone who wears what I'm gonna call out, but there is a portion of people who are little men, and that actually includes women too. Men or women, stays the same. Who are a threat to everyone around them and themselves potentially. And a form of armoring are people who look for artificial power. What is artificial power? Well, as like the videos that I brought up with artificial hierarchies, it's the power that is created in modern societies that is man-made. Natural power is natural physical capacities and psychological capacities. That in a certain sense is power, and that can, whether it can be abused or used for good, that stays a bit in the middle in this conversation. But for example, what is artificial power? Well, everyone in a modernist society, or at least how it should be, has his or her rights that they all share with everyone else that is accepted in that society, right? Well, there have to be exceptions. For example, some people become politicians. Other people get badges, titles, what other things are there? Uniforms of this kind or the other. And while the person, him or herself, is no different than before, talking about training and all of that, that's a different matter actually. It's a bit outside of that. The necessities to act out the role that is going to be given. These little men use uniforms, badges, titles, just places of artificial power in society that can be bestowed upon someone for whatever reason, and basically abuse that. It becomes married to their egos, and that is very dangerous. You see, if you look it up with police brutality and what have you, you can be certain that someone, in cases of police brutality, the officers, as that is called, in question will most likely have these problems. Their egos are out of control, they think they will talk down to people, whereas actually they don't really have any business doing so. In a life-threatening situation and you start cussing and shouting, that's different. But when when a cordial conversation turns into a shouting match or something of that sort, you're dealing with a little man who's hiding behind his or her badge, his or her uniform, his or her position that society gave him. You could say, well, but they might have earned it through recruitment and training and just showing their capacities. Some of them maybe, but overall no, I wouldn't say so. Because these people hate themselves, and you need to love yourself before you can love someone else. What does that say about someone who hates him or herself? They're gonna spit bile at everyone around them. The badge or the uniform, the title, position of power, whatever it's gonna be, will amplify that. What would you call that? Will amplify the or work. Maybe I should word it differently. Be congruent with that ego. The ego is now, or the person, the body, is protected through the power bestowed upon them. It gets bad enough, and you have those little men who start siding together with other little men, and they form up gangs, they form up corrupt subgroups within an authoritative body, and that is what most people call corruption today, without necessarily knowing where it comes from. Now, are there exceptions to this? Is there like something as people who are just straight up greedy and they just take dirty deals and all that? There is that as well, and not necessarily everyone who does that is a little man. Still using Wilhelm Reich's words. And by extent of that, I suppose, well, whenever you see police brutality, it should perhaps be worth noting. It's helpful to you and to me to realize that, I'm talking with someone who has an ego problem, because whatever reason, and this is something that my take on it, maybe Wilhelm Reich mentioned this, I could be wrong. My take on this is, shall I put it? In most cases, I think that petty men of all kinds had horrible relationships with their parents, their father, but also their mother, or people who should have been fathers and mothers to them, but were not. Parenting is a verb. Parent should be associated with being a verb. It's not just a thing you are because, a baby was born. It's an action. And as Schopenhauer, by the way, says, you are the action you undertake. Well, not exactly in those words, but I'm reading through one of his books right now. And he's just straight up German guy, by the way, for those who care about that. And there is another figure, Michael Tsarion, who has been analyzing this, and it's not for, well, I suppose I pay for his content, but I'm not comfortable just sharing everything that he shares behind the paywall, because I want him to succeed and have the financial means to keep doing what he is doing. Is also someone worth looking into. There are methods which, how shall one put it? There are methods by which you can defend yourself verbally against petty men. And, very simply, I think I can share this with ease, is that you call it out. You straight up call it out. You don't need to say, are you a little man? It's like, but do you have a bad relationship with your parents? Is this why you're doing this? Oh yeah, and to come back to my take, pardon me, I didn't really get into that. All the anger that they feel towards their parents for not parenting them, to the people that birthed a person, a little man. All the rage, all the pain, all the sadness that goes hand in hand with these parents, just not doing what they were supposed to, or doing it so terribly, being neglectful or abusive in some way or the other. The little man typically is a coward who vents that rage in a misguided way at just anyone. They don't have to face, mom or dad, but they can certainly make the lives of people they will only see once in their lives, maybe twice, absolutely miserable. And that's how they vent all of that, what you might call necrotic energy. Because energy needs an out, and Hans will one day perhaps write a book on that. Because I have my own takes on such. Been mulling on a very long time. But we'll see. We'll see. I think it will do me some good to look at the masters of old, and then I'll come up to my own ideas or my own take, and I might be able to provide, even if it's only ever going to be a supplement to what other great men definitely already put down. Yeah, so I think I shared more or less all I wanted to on that. If you, oh yeah, maybe it's worth noticing, like, if the powers that be, that have a lot of control and they can create these positions of power that these petty men would be all over, look at mm, look at what it's all about. If a position of power is just to essentially to mess with people who are in money trouble or whatever you, and actually only are there to make their lives even more horrible, or to evict them, or whatever it's going to be, and there is a lot of gray areas there, whatever you. But overall, just if the purpose is to really make people miserable, to put them in camps, let's put it like that, politely. If that is what someone's job is, and they know that they're gonna do exactly that and nothing else, well, the question quickly follows is that why would someone take on that job? And then you'll know that petty men are gonna be going to your doorstep, and you have to call them out. And you do not need to show them any undue compassion, because they are there to, well, usually they are there to destroy lives of others. And as the saying goes, make misery loves company. Misery doesn't love itself, it loves company. That is what happened in the 20th century in Europe, and in other places too, actually. I suppose Vietnam and all these other conflicts that I can't even begin to name them all. Most of that was carried out by guys just doing their job, but who forced them to take on the job in the first place? No, they're still supposed to be held accountable. And believe you me, petty men are interested only in more and more power for themselves, so they can vent their neuroticism and pathologies onto anyone else, to distract themselves, by the way, with getting big paychecks so they can afford big distractions for themselves, all because then they would not have to face those that hurt them and to face their own true self. And that's all I think I have to share on that. You do with it what you wish. I think this is very valuable information, especially in the wake of the last 2 years. A lot of horrible things happened to a lot of people and are still going on today. Financially, people were put in camps. It simply did happen. And this is the work of these petty men. Oh, and any anti-white is always a petty man. Always. Because they are venting their hatred for themselves and their broken youth unto those that make them envious. It's also a big trait of the petty man. They hate the success of others. They hate the happiness of others. It comes back down to that misery thing. So if anyone ever wonders why did that person just destroy that other guy's life that he never even knew, here is your reason. So any anti-white, in whichever capacity, that is out there to willfully destroy every white on the planet, down to the smallest child, to get rid of those pretty blue eyes, those pretty green eyes, that pretty red hair. You know, and that's only the physical traits. What about all the great crafts? Those marvelous statues. Where are they all going if it's up to petty men, to anti-whites? What about artistry? What about the rewriting of history? What about the repainting of old paintings to depict whites into a non-white fashion? Did you know that stuff happened? That it is going on right now? Books being rewritten or just being burned? The prevention of books being printed. The petty man can still be very organized and can still do a lot of damage. It's actually what I believe also a large part is what shall one call it? If I look back, if I look at history and I see the Roman legions march into Gaul or into Germania, do you think those were good guys who were doing that? No, my glorious 13th Legion or whatever. Do you think that those men who were legionnaires, were physically capable? They could punch your teeth in, they could spear you down, didn't they? That's what it was all about for them. You think they were good guys, stealing all the gold from the Gauls? Or are we not supposed to talk about history repeating itself over and over? You need to look back at history a little bit to learn from it. That's also, by the way, one more trait of the petty man. They hate history. They will obscure it, they will get rid of it, they will rewrite it, whatever they have to do. Because history betrays what their... what would you call that? The actions they want to undertake on good people, the decent, those who stand up for white well-being. They want to blind you. They want to blind you from what they're going to do to you if they only have half the chance to do it. Look at the disarmament of populations. I wonder what that's all about. Maybe that also needs to change in most countries. They're trying very hard in the USA to go after the weaponry that, the tools of self-defense that people can apply there, right? I wonder why. Every time in history, people, the population gets disarmed and bloodshed soon follows. What is that saying again of Eowyn? Those who do not know how to wield a sword can yet die upon them. And as far as our Saxon ancestors would have said, the armed man is a free man. That does not mean that if you have only the one... Let's just put it in there in the way of, let's say you have a house. You have your sword on your belt. It's like, let's say it's 700 AD, right? And like a gang of Charlemagne's thugs shows up on your doorstep. You might not be able to sort them all down. You might take out one guy, maybe a second guy, and then they run you through. That is reality. That is a true situation, I suppose. But here is the thing. Prevention. Those thugs would not show up if they know, or that is to say, if they have the knowledge beforehand that you're a capable swordman, do you think that they're gonna be confident, or be as confident as that they went in knowing that you had two left hands when it comes to self-defense? And coming back then to that point, if you truly are a capable warrior, if you will, and they still come at you with like 12 dudes or whatever number it's going to be, and they might still take you down, you at least might have to, You make them pay for it one way or the other. Little men do not like that. Like I said, they are cowards. Then you have to, in that sense, you have to pose, okay, who's going to be number one? Who's going to be number one? Which of you scumbags is going to be number one to face me with my sword? You all have your swords too, sure. But one of you has to be number one. One of you is going to go down with me. If you can embrace that attitude, you will see a lot of little men scurry in all directions. There will still be some absolute psychopaths out there who would still go, and they will be that number one. That is a thing. But it's going to be far less common. And, well, as violence is initiated, or I shall put it differently, if they know that they can go do that at one house, but if every house has like that one guy with a sword, they're still going to run out of people long before they subjugate anyone. More or less. There is not a single empire that lived longer than up until the point that people said, you know what's been enough. You know, invaders from outside are one thing, if you will, but it really depends just on the people itself. It's like, we've had enough. Let it just fall apart. And yeah, that is history. The one who wants to live the most is usually also the one who will come through. And petty men hating themselves, they want to live to spread misery, but they do not want to live for the sake of living. And in that sense, I would even say, read some Robert E. Howard. Bit of Conan the Barbarian as your inspiration is pretty good, I can tell you that much. And, well, that's, I think I'm going to leave it there because the machine is going to give out. But you all, yeah, think about it. Are you going to take the responsibility upon yourself? And let's say you live in a population where it's illegal to have your own tools of self-defense. Maybe give a few lawyers a call. Maybe reach out to people, talk it over. You know, pro and contra, see what's good, see what's bad. And anything else is, well, it's to keep the hyenas off your farm, so to say. It's to keep the hyenas off your property. It's to keep the hyenas off your sons, your daughters, your friends. That's what you do that for at the end of the day. There's nothing to do. Actually, I can go to a quote of Faramir as well. I might get it a little wrong, but it basically comes down to that he does not love the sword for its keen edge, he does not love the arrow for its swiftness, nor the warrior for his glory. He only loves that which, Faramir only loves that which they protect. Very powerful, as far as I would say. And there's more than entertainment in Tolkien. Look at him look at the petty men of the world trying to destroy his works, as they've been destroying countless other works. Don't let them, and stand up to him. All else is going to play itself out very well. And good people have more power than ill people, than the evil ones. They do. Because they are the ones who can create. And they are the ones who love themselves. And with that said, you all have a good one, and bye-bye.